Have you ever woken up one day and realized that everything you've been chasing means nothing? Not in a dramatic way, but in that quiet, crushing way where you sit at the edge of your bed and feel like a stranger to your own life. You look around and suddenly the goals, the routines, the people, they all seem distant, like echoes from a movie you didn't choose to be in. That's how it starts. Not with fireworks, but with stillness. With a silence so heavy it makes your chest tighten. At first you try to ignore it. You push it away with productivity, with distractions, with pretending. But something inside you has cracked, and through that crack the truth begins to seep in. You've been living someone else's script. And now that you see it, you can't unsee it. This is the moment your awakening begins. And no one prepares you for what comes next. Because waking up is not light, it's shadow. Awakening is painful but necessary. Have you ever believed that waking up would feel like sunlight, like clarity, like peace? That once you saw the truth, everything would finally fall into place? Most of us did. We were sold that fantasy, that the moment you wake up, you'll feel enlightened, empowered, and free. But the real awakening feels like dying. Not a physical death, but something deeper, quieter, and much more disorienting, the death of who you thought you were. You wake up, and instead of light, you find shadows. You see the cracks in your identity, the illusions you built your life on. And it doesn't feel like relief, it feels like grief. Because before the clarity comes the chaos. You begin to realize you've been living according to someone else's narrative. Parents, teachers, media, culture, all shaping a version of you that was never truly you. The goals you pursued borrowed. The beliefs you clung to, hand-me-downs. The you that you defended for so long starts to feel like a costume stitched together by expectation. And that realization doesn't liberate you, it wounds you. Because once the veil is lifted, there's no going back. You can't pretend anymore. You can't unknow what you now know, and that's where the pain begins. Awakening doesn't bring immediate strength, it exposes weakness. It shows you everything you've avoided, everything you've denied, everything you've lied to yourself about just to keep functioning. And suddenly functioning isn't enough. You feel the emptiness, like a weight. Not because you're broken, but because all the noise that used to fill you is gone. The artificial motivation, the false praise, the hollow validation, it used to keep you moving. Now, stripped of it all, you're left standing in silence with one terrifying truth: you don't know who you are. And that's where most people quit. That's where they turn back, plug back into the illusion, distract themselves, numb the ache. But if you choose to stay, if you choose to remain in the discomfort instead of escaping it, something sacred begins. The pain becomes the gateway. The confusion becomes the map. The shadow becomes your teacher. Carl Jung called it the process of individuation, the journey back to your truest self. But the first step of that journey is disillusionment, the demolition of false identities. And yes, it's brutal. Yes, it's lonely. Yes, it feels like madness at times. But it's also the only path to real freedom. Because waking up doesn't give you the answers. It forces you to ask better questions. It doesn't give you direction. It makes you realize how many paths you never truly chose. And in that terrifying void where everything familiar crumbles, there's a seed of something real, something honest, something yours. So if you're here feeling empty, confused, maybe even broken, don't run from it. Don't silence it. Listen. Stay with it. This is the beginning, not the end. You're not losing yourself. You're shedding what was never you. Awakening is not light, it is shadow. But in the darkness, if you're brave enough to keep walking, you'll find a truth far deeper than comfort. You'll find yourself. Demotivation is not laziness, it's mourning the false self. You're not lazy. That feeling you're carrying, the heaviness, the stillness, the silence inside, it's not a lack of ambition. It's not apathy, it's mourning. And what you're mourning isn't something the world can see. It's something deeper. Invisible. The version of yourself that no longer fits. The identity you wore like armor for years, maybe decades, has finally cracked, and the pieces are too sharp to hold on to. For so long, you lived on autopilot. You chased goals because someone told you they were worthy. You smiled at achievements that didn't touch your soul. You showed up, performed, produced, played the part, and the world applauded you for it. Hardworking, disciplined, successful. But inside, a quiet death was taking place. You were slowly fading beneath a life you didn't truly choose. And now suddenly that life no longer moves you. The mask is slipping. The applause sounds hollow. The meaning is gone. And so you stop. Not out of weakness, but because your soul can't lie anymore. This demotivation, it isn't a defect. It's a signal, a spiritual alarm bell. It's your inner world screaming that the old patterns no longer serve you, that the game you were playing has lost its purpose. You try to force yourself back into the rhythm, wake up early, get things done, push harder, but it feels fake now. It feels forced. Because deep down, you already know you're not meant to go back. You've outgrown who you were, but you haven't yet grown into who you're becoming. And that's where the grief lives. You are in between. Between the version of you that was crafted to be accepted and the version of you that's still being born. There is no roadmap here, no clear direction, just a heavy fog and a sense of loss that most people will never understand. That's why they tell you, just try harder, be more positive, stop overthinking. But those words bounce off you like empty echoes, because your pain isn't laziness. It's sacred. It's the pain of transformation. Carl Jung once said that the first step toward individuation is chaos, and this is it. Demotivation isn't the enemy. It's the morning ritual of your false self. You're shedding everything that no longer aligns. The old beliefs, the borrowed goals, the conditional values, they're falling away. And yes, it's terrifying, because what replaces them, who are you without them? The answer isn't instant, and it isn't clean. This stage isn't about rebuilding yet. It's about sitting in the ashes without trying to rise too soon. It's about honoring the death before rushing into rebirth. Because if you skip the morning, you carry the rot forward. So stop judging yourself for not being driven. What you're feeling is necessary. It's intelligent. It's a sign that your soul refuses to betray itself any longer. This stillness, this resistance to fake ambition, it's your inner world reclaiming its voice. Trust it. Let the old fall. Let yourself feel the grief. Because what's on the other side isn't just a better version of you. It's the real one. And once you meet that version, once you move from performance to presence, you'll understand that true motivation was never outside of you. It was never about status approval or success. It was always about alignment. And now finally you're on your way there. The loneliness you're feeling isn't social. It's not because you lack friends or company or conversation. It's something deeper, something almost no one talks about. It's existential. It's the soul's solitude after waking up in a world that never wanted you to awaken at all. Because once you truly see, you also start to see how few people actually want to see anything at all. It begins subtly. You're at a dinner table. Laughter, casual conversations, surface-level smiles. And yet something inside you feels disconnected. You're physically present, but emotionally distant. Not because you're cold, but because you're awake. You can't pretend anymore. You can't laugh at what feels hollow. You can't engage in mass when your own has already fallen off. This is the loneliness of consciousness. The kind Jung spoke of the void that opens up when you cross the threshold from conditioned existence into inner freedom. It's the price of truth, because truth is rarely shared. Most people are still dancing the same choreography, seeking comfort in conformity, peace, and performance. You've stopped dancing, and now you feel like a ghost in your own life. And here's the twist: the more you awaken, the more invisible you become, because your very presence unsettles those still asleep. You remind them of the cage they pretend not to see. You reflect back a version of life they're not ready to face. And so they retreat, they avoid, they label you. They say you've changed. They say you're distant. And they're right, you are. You've left the tribe not physically, but spiritually. You no longer worship what they worship. You no longer bow to the same idols of success, pleasure, validation. And so yes, you're alone. Not because you chose it, but because authenticity always comes with exile. That's the rite of passage no one warns you about. But this loneliness, painful as it is sacred. It means you are no longer guided by applause or fear or expectation. You are learning to stand without leaning, to walk without following, to live without pretending. And though it hurts, though it sometimes breaks you, it also remakes you. You are not lost. You're in the wilderness between who you were and who you are becoming. This is where real strength is forged. Not in crowds, but in solitude. Not in agreement, but in truth. And one day when you've made peace with the silence, you'll find that you're not really alone. Because on the other side of loneliness is authenticity. And in that space, your real life begins. No one warns you about the part that comes after awakening, the part where you're forced to meet the parts of yourself you've been running from your entire life. We all want to become better, to heal, to grow. But no one tells you that healing is not light work, it's shadow work. And shadow work begins not with affirmations or self-love, but with horror. The horror of realizing how much of your life was lived in denial of your own darkness. Carl Jung said it best, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The shadow isn't just a metaphor, it's the repressed version of you. It's every impulse you were taught to suppress, every truth you buried to be liked, every wound you never gave language to. It's your rage, your envy, your lust, your fear, your need for control. It's everything you were told would make you unlovable if anyone ever saw it. So you locked it away. You built a persona, a polished self to walk through the world, obedient, good, successful, agreeable. But deep down, the shadow didn't vanish. It waited. It grew in the dark, fueled by rejection and silence. And now that you've awakened, the shadow begins to stir. It demands to be seen, to be felt, to be integrated. Not destroyed, integrated. Because it is you. And it holds a piece of your wholeness you've yet to claim. The mistake most people make is trying to outrun their shadow with positivity. They light candles, repeat mantras, and call it healing. But true healing is descending into the basement of your psyche and turning on the light. It's staring directly into your jealousy, your selfishness, your manipulation, and saying, I see you. I accept that you're a part of me, and I choose to no longer act like you don't exist. That's where transformation begins, not in pretending to be pure, but in reclaiming the exiled parts of yourself. Because until you do, your shadow will control your relationships, sabotage your goals, and distort your sense of self. You'll keep attracting chaos, not because you're cursed, but because you're unconsciously recreating situations that mirror your unresolved wounds. Confronting your shadow is not self-hate. It's the deepest form of self-respect. It's saying I am willing to know myself fully, even if it shatters who I thought I was. And yes, it's painful. Yes, it's ugly. Yes, it humbles you. But it also frees you. Because when you own your shadow, it loses its power to control you. You stop projecting it onto others. You stop blaming the world for the war that's happening inside you. This is the hard truth. The path to authenticity passes through the realm of your shadow. There is no bypass, no shortcut, only through. You will cry. You will tremble. You will rage. But if you keep going, if you keep facing what's been hidden, you will emerge not as someone new, but as someone whole. That is what healing truly is, not fixing yourself, but finally becoming all of yourself, shadow and light, integrated, honest, and free. There comes a moment on the path of awakening when you realize something terrifying: the person you've been isn't real, not fully, not authentically. That version of you, the one shaped by praise, reward, survival, and image, was constructed to be accepted, not to be whole. And as you begin to shed that false self, a deep grief sets in. Because you're not just letting go of illusions. You're letting go of a life, a story, an identity that once made you feel safe, even if it was a prison. No one prepares you for how painful it is to let go of the person you thought you were supposed to be. The achiever, the helper, the obedient son, the good girl, the people pleaser, the overcomer. That persona so tightly bound to your ego has been your mask for years, maybe even decades. And even though it never truly fit, it became familiar. It helped you survive. It got you love. It kept you out of danger. But survival is not the same as living. Letting go of the false self feels like dying. And in a way it is. It's an ego death, a psychological unraveling. The beliefs that once motivated you, fame, approval, appearance, success, status, start to feel empty. And without those goals to chase, you feel directionless, lost. It's disorienting to not know who you are anymore. To look in the mirror and see a face you can't fully recognize because so much of it was built from expectation rather than essence. The world doesn't help. It keeps asking you to perform, to go back to your normal self. to be productive, to be fine. But something inside you resists. You can't unsee the lie anymore. You can't pretend the mask is you. And the longer you sit in that space between identities, the void between who you were and who you're becoming, the more fragile and exposed you feel. It's lonely, it's quiet, it's raw. But this in-between is sacred. Jung called it the night sea journey. It's not a crisis to be fixed. It's a rite of passage, a transition into deeper truth. The pain you feel isn't weakness. It's the breaking of the shell that once confined you. It's the mourning of the self you no longer need. And beneath that grief, there's a quiet liberation waiting. A freedom born not of achievement, but of authenticity. Because the false self, no matter how praised, will always leave you hungry. Hungry for truth, hungry for rest, hungry to be seen, not for how well you perform, but for who you really are beneath all the roles and scripts. And that real you, the one emerging slowly through the discomfort, is not perfect but whole, not polished but true. This is the paradox of letting go. It hurts more than anything, yet heals more than you imagine. It's not a clean break. It's a sacred unraveling. And when you stop clinging to the story that no longer serves you, you begin to write the one that does. From your voice, your values, your core. That's where life truly begins, not in becoming someone else, but in finally returning to yourself. One of the most terrifying moments in the journey of awakening is when you're finally forced to look into the mirror of your own shadow, and this time without flinching. No more spiritual bypassing. No more affirmations to gloss over the wound. No more blaming your parents, your ex, society, or fate. Just you standing in front of the raw, unfiltered parts of your psyche you spent a lifetime avoiding. This is the part where most people turn back. Because what's waiting in that shadow isn't just pain, it's truth. And truth demands responsibility. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And now you understand what he meant. Because the darkness you see is not out there. It's within. It's your suppressed rage, your buried shame, your fear of being ordinary, your manipulations, your pride, your need for control. These fragments, which you've labeled as bad, have always been part of you. You just learned how to disown them to be accepted. You became agreeable, polite, good. But that goodness came at the cost of wholeness. Now that you've awakened, your soul won't let you lie anymore. It won't let you blame others for your triggers. It won't let you seek external validation as a substitute for self-trust. It's demanding something far harder than perfection. It's demanding integration. And integration means taking radical emotional responsibility, not in a punishing, self-hating way, but in an honest, courageous, liberating way. It's the moment you stop saying, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What in me is being called to grow?" That shift is seismic because it means you're no longer a victim of your past or your programming. You're the author now. And authors don't get to complain about the plot, they rewrite it. But here's the paradox: becoming the author means owning not only your light, but also your darkness. And that's where the fear kicks in. Because facing your shadow means confronting the part of you that is capable of hurting, manipulating, deceiving, controlling. Not to glorify it, but to understand it, to tame it, to make it conscious. Most people never do this. They build their lives avoiding that confrontation. But you, if you're reading this feeling, this you've already begun. And yes, it's lonely. You'll be misunderstood, called too intense, too sensitive, too serious. But none of that matters. Because the moment you take ownership of your emotional life, you become free. Free not in the way the world sells it, through distraction, success, or pleasure, but through clarity, through depth, through integrity. And when that happens, you stop needing the world to be perfect. You stop expecting others to complete you. You realize that your pain wasn't a punishment, but an invitation, an initiation into real adulthood, into emotional sovereignty, into being fully, fiercely, unapologetically alive. That's the gift on the other side of your shadow, not more light, but more truth. And truth, when owned, becomes power. Quiet power, real power, the kind that no one can give you and no one can take away. There's a myth that freedom feels light, that once you awaken, you're suddenly unburdened, liberated, joyful. But real freedom isn't weightless, it's heavy. Not because it's oppressive, but because it's honest. Once you wake up and realize no one is coming to save you, not the government, not your parents, not your religion or relationship, you're left with something terrifying: your own agency, your own blank page, and the terrifying question, now what? This is the moment where many falter, because it's easier to blame. To say I am this way because of my past, or they made me like this. It's easier to carry resentment than to carry responsibility. But awakening burns away those excuses. It strips you down to your core, where the truth waits. If your life is empty, it is your task to fill it, not with what others told you it should be, but with what your soul longs for. That is freedom, and that is the burden. The idea sounds empowering until you live it, because creating your own life means making decisions without a map. It means risking failure, facing ridicule, and walking through doors without knowing what's on the other side. It means letting go of inherited dreams and crafting something uniquely yours, something no one else might understand. That's terrifying, and yet it's also sacred. Because once you realize that the systems around you, the metrics of success, the social roles, the expectations were never built to nourish your truth, you begin to reject them. You stop playing the game. But without the game, there's no scoreboard. There's no applause, no gold stars. Just you, your choices, and your conscience. And this is where real courage is born. Jung believed that true individuation, the becoming of the self, requires this deep internal authorship. You stop outsourcing your identity. You stop asking others who you should be, and instead you turn inward. You start asking harder questions. What do I value? What do I want to create, even if no one else sees it? Who am I when no one is watching? This isn't a journey of perfection. It's a journey of presence. And it doesn't look impressive on the outside. It looks like failing, starting again, sitting in silence, walking away from comfort, and saying no when you used to say yes. It looks like disappointing others so you can finally stop disappointing yourself. It's hard, but it's worth it. Because the life that emerges, slowly, awkwardly, but honestly, is one you can stand inside without shame. One where you don't need validation because you've built it from your essence, not your image. That's the quiet power of freedom. It doesn't shout, it doesn't glow, it doesn't sell well on Instagram, but it's real. It's yours. And in the end, that's all that matters: a life authored by you, lived from the inside out. That's not just freedom, it's maturity. It's sovereignty. It's the divine weight of being alive. Real freedom begins when you stop performing. The greatest lie we're sold is that happiness comes from being who others want us to be. We chase titles, approval, and roles that never truly fit, only to wake up one day exhausted, disconnected, and unsure who we really are. The truth is, your peace will never come from perfection or external validation. It begins the moment you stop performing and start living from within. This isn't about abandoning your responsibilities. It's about reclaiming your authenticity. Letting go of the false self doesn't mean becoming careless. It means becoming real. You stop apologizing for your truth. You stop betraying yourself to belong. You begin to grieve the mask you've worn and accept the messiness of who you actually are. And through that grief, a new kind of power emerges, not flashy but grounded, not loud but unshakable. It's the power of someone who has looked within, faced their darkness, and decided to live truthfully anyway. If you take anything from this, let it be this: the life that matters isn't the one others understand. It's the one you can live with honestly, fully, and without regret.